Hello everyone, today I'm gonna walk you through how we use arrays in our programming. And let's try and make an example program application of it in C++ language. But before that, let's have a quick recall about arrays. What is an array? An array in programming is a collection of elements of the same data type stored in a single variable, where each element is accessed using an index or position number. Now imagine you need to store the temperatures for every day of the week. Without arrays, you'd have to create 7 different variables like temp1, temp2, and etc., which would be messy and inefficient. An array allows us to store a collection of data of the same type under a single name, organized by index numbers. Let's try and make a weekly temperature tracker, wherein the goal of this program is to store daily temperature readings for a week in an array and calculate the average temperature. Let's do this line by line and see how it works. Now the first thing we need to do is to make the setup and headers. In the first 2 lines, let's include IOStream and IOManip. IOStream allows us to use cout and cin, which is useful for displaying out and placing in our values. IOManip or input-output manipulation is used specifically here so that by later, we can format our final answer like by rounding it to 2 decimal places. Let us also make use of namespace std. This saves us from typing std before every command. We then place our execution entry point. This is the brain of our program where the execution starts. Now in here, let us declare out our array. Basically here, we are telling the computer to reserve 7 slots for the 7 days in a week of temperature readings as decimal numbers. That's why we use double instead of integer, because int can only hold whole numbers. Let's call this group temps for temperature. We also declare our sum and average still both as double, as they will most likely be decimal numbers. Here, we initialize sum to 0 so we can have a clean starting point for our addition later. Let's make a title for this to be displayed on our console when the program starts. Now let's set up our first loop for getting the user's input. In the loop, let us make it ask the user for the average temperature of each day. We make use of a for loop since we know exactly how many times we need to repeat the action. Additional information: arrays are 0 indexed, which means the first slot is temps 0, not temps 1. As the loop runs, I changes from 0 to 6. This line takes the user's input and plugs it into the correct slot in our array. Now that the array is full of data, we need to sum it all up by adding a second loop. The plus equals operator takes the value currently in sum and adds the value to the current index of temps to it. So by the end of the 7th turn, we have the total of all temperatures. Next, we add the calculation for the average temperature of the week simply by dividing the total to the number of days. In this part, this is where that IOManip header comes in handy. As we set the precision to 2, it forces the output to show exactly 2 decimal places. Finally, we make it display the result to the user. Let's not forget to end the code with return 0, so it would tell the operating system that the program finished successfully. Now let's try and run the code to test it. Now you know how arrays work. Thank you for listening.